Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Drees. I'm your mystery reader for today. We're going to look at chapter 9. So turn your books to page 61 and you will see chapter 9. And the word at the top of the page says worrisome. Worrisome is a describing word, it's an adjective. It means nerve-wracking, perturbing, and unsettling feeling. Here's an example sentence. It was indeed a worrisome turn of events. After stumbling over a few brief words addressed to the TV cameras and posing for a somewhat awkward photo for the local paper, India was relieved to be back in the family van. The drive was filled with singing, mostly led by Dad's off-key wailing, which this time no one really minded. When they arrived home, somewhat tired and rumpled, the Wimples found the kitchen table filled with food and a note stuck to a jug of freshly made lemonade. A feast for a champion from your friends in Yungabilla. India's stomach growled at the meal before them. Coleslaw, mashed potatoes, roast chicken, and gravy. And in the center was Mrs. O'Donnell's famous blueberry cheesecake. "Let's dig in," Dad said. But all through dinner, India could tell something was bothering him. She knew because he was trying extra hard to look excited, but on his forehead was what Mom called his worry crease. "Is anything wrong, Dad?" "Wrong? No. How could anything be wrong? Today, my little girl won her spelling bee." Dad was a terrible liar. "Fiddlesticks," Nana Flo noticed the worry crease too. "You're fibbing. Tell us what's wrong." Dad knew there was no point trying to hide it. "Before we left the club, I was given the details of the next round. It's going to be a little costly, that's all. But that's my problem." "How much money?" Mom asked. "I'm not sure yet." "Well, let's figure it out." Nana Flo pulled a notepad from the kitchen drawer. "What do we need?" Dad began listing the cost while Nana Flo wrote it all down, and it added up fast. The next round in Huddersfield was a 6-hour drive away, so they'd need to stay overnight. The gas and RV park costs alone were going to be pretty steep. It really was worrisome. Mom bit her lip. Boo frowned. Dad kept cranking his head this way and that, as if the numbers would change if he looked at them from a different angle. But they never did. "It's just a silly competition," India said. "I can drop out." "Double fiddlesticks," Nana Flo cried, saying what everyone else was thinking. "There's nothing silly about my granddaughter being one of the best spellers the world has ever seen." "But we can't afford it," India shrugged. "We'll find a way to afford it," Dad said. But now the whole family had Dad's worry crease, which made him worry even more, until he made a stand. Literally, he got to his feet and puffed up out his chest. "What does it say on the side of my van?" Dad didn't wait for the answer. "Arnie the Fixer, that's what. And I'm going to fix this too." "How?" Boo asked. "With a brilliant plan." "What brilliant plan?" "I'd tell you, but it's way past your bedtime." As much as India loved Dad, she thought his answer smelled fishy. Dad started gathering up the plates. "Off you go. I'll be there soon to tuck you in." The Wimples knew Dad didn't have a brilliant plan and that he was telling another fib, but this time no one called out fiddlesticks because they were quietly hoping it might come true. It had been a long day by the time India finally climbed into bed. As she listened to Mom's story of brave Boo and ingenious India, she tried hard to concentrate as Boo courageously battled a 3-headed monster, and India concocted a clever decoy to lure the beast away from her fearless brother and into an elaborate trap. That night, India's dreams were filled with swords and ropes and dangling from flying machines when she was woken by a giant crash. At first she wasn't sure if she dreamed the crash until she heard a low groan. Her heart jolted. "Boo!" She sped across the hall to his room, but he was already out of bed. "You heard it too?" Mom and Dad appeared next. "Is everyone okay?" Before they could answer, they heard another groan. It was coming from Nana Flo's room. Dad got there first and saw her lying on the floor, shards of broken plaster all around her, and scattered money, lots of it. Dad knelt beside Nana Flo. Are you okay? Yes, yes, she insisted, just a little embarrassed. What happened, Mom asked. I wanted to help India make it to the next round of the competition. She stared at the mess on the floor. But the plug in Ernie was hard to pull out and I dropped him. That's when all realized the broken pieces of plaster were Ernie. Where did you get all this money, Dad asked. I've been saving a little each week for my pension in case we needed it for a good cause, and I think we have one. There must be hundreds of dollars here, Boo said. 525 to be exact, Nana Flo said, which is enough to cover all of us traveling to the next round. We'll pay you back, Dad said. Fiddlesticks, Nana Flo said. You won't do anything of the kind. I'm part of the family too, and I'd like to help out. What do you say, India? Want to give the next round a shot? I think I would, India sniffed. Thank you, Nana. Nana Flo wiped the tear that was trembling on India's eyelashes. You're most welcome, but there are two things I'd like in return. Anything, India said. I'll need help sweeping up Ernie. Of course. And can you help me off this floor? My backside's starting to go numb. That's the end of chapter 9. Now we're going to look at chapter 10. And oh my gosh, this is such a big word. It is fortuitous. It's also an adjective that means a describing word, and it means unexpected, unanticipated, completely lucky. It was a fortuitous encounter none of them expected. Brave Boo stepped onto the tattered rope bridge that swung over the gaping chasm. Chasm, C-H-A-S-M, India spelled, to the castle of the evil overlord. It was the morning of the next round, and Mom told the story as she lay on the grass in the backyard with Boo, India, and Nana Flo beside her. The same evil overlord whose flock of vultures had kidnapped ingenious India, who was now being held prisoner, even though the overlord was truly malevolent. Malevolent, M-A-L-E-V-O-L-E-N-T. Brave Boo would teach him not to mess with his sister. The bridge swung on the icy updrafts. Brave Boo focused on reaching the castle door ahead, ignoring the frayed rope and the deadly drop beneath him, when, from the blackened skies, a fire-breathing griffin, G-R-I-F-F-I-N, half lion, half eagle, swept toward him. Brave Boo held out his sword, ready to defend himself, but the griffin flew straight past him and instead breathed his fiery breath onto the bridge, immediately setting it ablaze. Ingenious India saw the flames from her room at the top of the tower. She knew there were only 2 seconds before the bridge would fall, sending Boo plummeting. She had to think of a plan. She had to save her brother. She had to. How do I look? Dad was standing on the back steps dressed in a lime green suit. Fred Greenberg had given it to him as payment after Dad fixed his leaking toilet. It was tight around his stomach and a little short in the sleeves and legs. You look as dashing as when I first met you, Mom said. This wasn't exactly true. In fact, it wasn't true at all. But it was something India loved about her mom and dad. Fibbing was allowed in situations like these. Let's go then. After they brushed themselves down, the Wimple family piled into the van. Dad had to turn the key a few times before it sputtered to life, and they were off. But they'd only driven a few miles out of Yungabilla when the engine coughed and groaned and the van staggered to a stop by the side of the road. I'm sure this won't take long, Dad said, squeezing out his tight jacket and rolling up his shirt sleeves. He grabbed his toolbox and began working under the hood. There was a series of clangs and grunts and one very loud, ouch! Are you okay, Mom called? Fine, Dad sang back. Huddersfield is a long way. India tried not to sound worried. Do you think we'll be there on time? Your father will do his best. Mom glanced down at her watch, and for a second, even she wore Dad's worry crease. We can use the time for a little more practice. Mom, Boo, and Nana Flo took turns choosing their favorite tricky words, and Dad finally shouted, all done. He appeared from behind the hood, his shirt and face streaked in grease. She'll need a little bit of push to get started. Nana Flo got out first. Not you, Ma, Dad said. Why not me? She flexed her muscles. I can arm wrestle you under the table any day. The Wimple family lined up behind the van while Dad sat behind the steering wheel. He turned the key and the engine wheezed and chugged before falling silent. Okay, and push! The Wimples shoved with everything they had and the van began to move. Dad tried again to start the engine. It clunked and whirred. That's it, Dad yelled out the window. We're moving! But it was at that moment 3 dramatic things happened. Number 1, the engine sparked to life. Number 2, the wheels spun in the soggy ground. Number 3, a shower of mud flew into the air and all over the Wimples. Dad pulled on the emergency brake, poked his head out the window, and stared at his mud-covered family. Sorry. Huge globs of brown gunk dripped from them. They stood in soggy silence until Boo said, maybe no one will notice. He wiped away the mud to reveal a smirk that made the others smile too. Why are we standing around? Nana swiped a splat from her face. We've got a spelling bee to get to. The Wimples dragged their grubby selves into the van, put on their seatbelts, and with a groaning clang, Dad shifted into gear and they lumbered back onto the road. The van shuddered and shook as it drove along the highway. Every other vehicle passed it easily, including a squad of elderly motorcyclists. Dad patted the dashboard. That's it, girl. Not far now. As they drove into Huddersfield, Mom read the map and directed Dad through the unfamiliar streets. Nana Flo glanced at her watch, wondering if they were ever going to make it, when Boo spotted a stupendously spectacular spelling bee banner. Over there! Once again, the contest was in the town hall, a beautiful stone building with a clock tower that loomed high above. Dad peeked at the clock. They had 2 minutes until registration closed. Get ready to run, Wimples. He pulled to the curb with a screech of the tires. The Wimples raced up the red carpeted stairs and beneath the arched doorway. They zigzagged through the crowd in the lobby and followed the spelling bee signs until they stood, muddy, bedraggled, and out of breath in front of the registration desk. We're the Wimples, Dad panted, his teeth shining brightly from his grease-streaked face. And this is India. She's here to compete. A teenage girl with bright blue pigtails was seated beside a rather grouchy-looking man with a hairpiece that looked like a small hamster had settled on his head. The man looked at the Wimples up and down, making a face as if a stray dog had just peed on his favorite pair of slippers. Your lady, he sneered. We had some car trouble, Dad explained, but we're here now, and we're too late, the man with the rodent hair said smugly. Registration has closed. Dad looked at his watch. 3 minutes ago. The man smiled in a way that wasn't very friendly, which makes you 3 minutes late. Dad wasn't about to give up. Maybe you could ignore that since we've come so far and ignore the rules. He looked at Dad as if he had just asked him to swim with sharks. What is the point of having rules if we simply ignore them? Nana Flo jabbed her muddy hands onto her muddy hips because a worn-out van and a puffed-up, pompous official shouldn't get in the way of one of the country's greatest spellers? I'm sorry, madam, but rules are rules. He didn't seem sorry at all as he picked up his laptop and strutted away. He can't do that, Nana Flo rolled up her sleeves. I'm going to teach that miserable man a judo lesson. He'll never... Dad held her back. No, Mom, he's right. We're late. The Wimples stood slumped over in disappointment and watched the official leave. It was only now, after India's chances of registering were gone, that she realized how much she wanted to compete. A teeny tiny part of her was even excited about standing in front of the microphone again. Despondent, India thought, a word meaning being sad or dismayed. D-E-S-P-O-N-D-E-N-T. I'm sorry, India, Dad said. Unlike the rodent-haired man, he meant all the way to his toes. I really tried to get us here on time. That's okay, India shrugged. It's just a competition. Anyone who had been listening could tell from her voice that it wasn't just a competition at all. Luckily for India, there was someone listening. The teenager at the table had been packing up but stopped when she saw the tears glistening in India's eyes. She wound back her watch and held her arm. Look, according to me, it's 2 minutes before registration closes. But that man said, Deb began. It doesn't matter what he said, she scowled. He's been in a bad mood all day, and people say teenagers are grumpy. That's the way Nana Flo cheered. I like a little rule bending. The teenager opened her laptop and found India's name. Here you are. Her fingers flew across the keys before she handed over a numbered card. You're in. Thank you, India draped the card around her neck. We'll never forget this. Dad shook that girl's hand so hard that India worried he'd shake it off. You're welcome, but you have to hurry. It's about time to start. The Wimples tore across the lobby and slipped into the auditorium only seconds before the doors were closed. And that is the end of chapter 10. Oh, boys and girls, I am so excited to read chapters 11 and 12. Stay tuned tomorrow for the next reader. Bye.